Are you curious about what became of the four daughters of Pat Boone, the clean-cut crooner who once challenged Elvis Presley on the charts and became one of America's most beloved family icons? Behind the polished white buck shoes, the wholesome image, and the string of 1950s hits was a father whose life blended faith, fame, and family in ways that shaped each of his daughters forever. Their stories are more than footnotes to a famous name they reveal: the triumphs, heartbreaks, reinventions, and quiet resilience of women raised within a dynasty built on morality music and the ever-watchful eye of the American public. Pat Boone's rise was unlike that of any other teen idol. At a time when rock and roll was feared, he became the safe counterbalance, handsome, well-groomed, married young raising children while selling millions of records. While Elvis swayed hips, Pat Boone sang hymns, pop standards, and romantic ballads. But beneath the image of the perfect American family was a father, under pressure, a husband juggling superstardom, and four daughters who navigated the weight of fame with grace, ambition, and sometimes tragedy. Each daughter entered Pat's world at a different chapter of his life. Cheryl, the eldest, grew up as the face of the Boone family brand, a symbol of purity and promise. Debby, the breakout star, carried the legacy into the 1970s with You Light Up My Life, a song that became one of the biggest hits in music history. And then there were Laury and Lindy, who chose quieter paths away from the glamour. Their stories, equally marked by faith, reinvention, and the complexities of being raised by a national idol. Together, the Boone daughters form a mosaic of inspiration and adversity. Some embraced the spotlight, others stepped back from it. Some confronted profound loss. All of them carried the Boone values, the emphasis on faith, family, and perseverance, even when life tested them in ways the public never saw. Let us open the story of Pat Boone's four daughters, tracing their journeys from the golden age of American pop to the paths they carved for themselves, each one revealing a side of the Boone legacy the spotlight never captured. Number 4. Cheryl Boone was born in 1954, the eldest daughter of Pat Boone and his wife Shirley Foley Boone. From the moment she entered the world, she was wrapped in the glow of a family already becoming a symbol of American wholesomeness. Pat Boone's career was exploding: hit records, television appearances, best-selling books, and Cheryl grew up in a household where faith, discipline, and public expectation blended into a single, unbreakable identity. As the firstborn, Cheryl experienced the Boone family spotlight more intensely than her sisters. She often appeared in promotional photos and television segments representing the ideal Christian family that millions of Americans admired. But behind the carefully curated image, Cheryl learned early about the pressures of protecting a brand that was bigger than any one person. Her childhood was filled with church services, charity events, rehearsals, and the constant awareness that the Boone name carried a responsibility. Despite this, Cheryl found her own direction with quiet determination. As a young woman, she embraced the humanitarian values instilled by her parents. While she never sought the fame that surrounded her family, she found purpose in service, working with organizations that supported children, families, and faith-driven missions. She married Michael Shackelford and later dedicated much of her life to raising her family with the same values she was raised on: compassion, spiritual grounding, and community involvement. Unlike Debby, whose voice would soon electrify the world, or Laury and Lindy, whose paths would diverge into their own forms of creativity, Cheryl chose a life away from the camera. But her impact within the Boone legacy is undeniable. She became the emotional anchor of the family, the steady presence who helped maintain unity across generations of children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Though Cheryl remained out of public controversies and headlines, she has appeared in documentaries and interviews about the Boone family, always offering measured, thoughtful reflections about growing up as Pat Boone's daughter. Her perspective often reveals what the public never knew: the sacrifices required to uphold an image and the grace required to live under it without losing yourself. Today, Cheryl lives privately, surrounded by her family, grounded in faith and a sense of purpose that has defined her life more profoundly than fame ever could. Among the Boone daughters, she is the quiet legacy, the foundation on which the others built their own stories. Number 3. Debby Boone was born in 1956, the second daughter of Pat Boone, and the one who would eventually eclipse even her father's fame, if only for a moment, with a song that became one of the most iconic ballads in modern music history. She grew up in the very heart of the Boone household, where harmony was both literal and symbolic. While her father balanced touring television and his role as America's moral counterweight to rock and roll rebellion, Debby and her sisters were raised on faith discipline and, above all, music. Debby began performing at a young age, singing with her sisters as the Boone Girls, appearing on her father's variety shows and absorbing the polished professionalism Pat demanded. But behind the wholesome family image, Debby carried a quiet intensity, a desire to prove herself beyond the Boone brand. She wanted to step into the spotlight, not as Pat Boone's daughter, but as an artist with her own emotional vocabulary. That chance arrived in 1977. At just 21 years old, Debby released You Light Up My Life, a soaring, heartfelt ballad that exploded across America. The song spent 10 consecutive weeks at number 1, broke chart records, won a Grammy, and became a generational anthem. Overnight, Debby Boone was more than a daughter of a star. She was a star in her own right. But meteoric fame came with its own shadows. The song was a monumental success, but its weight became difficult to carry. People wanted more of the same, and the industry pressed Debby to replicate the impossible. While she continued recording, her career gradually shifted into Christian music, where she found greater artistic freedom and a deeper emotional connection. Her contemporary Christian albums in the 1980s earned her several Dove Awards and solidified her as a beloved figure in the faith community. Debby also flourished in other arenas. She acted on Broadway, appearing in productions like Grease and The King and I, and became a best-selling author of children's books and faith-centered reflections. She married Gabriel Ferrer, son of actor Jose Ferrer and singer Rosemary Clooney, linking two legendary entertainment families, and together they raised a family rooted in creativity and spiritual grounding. Throughout her life, Debby has carried her father's legacy with grace, but never used it as a crutch. She built a career defined not by controversy or spectacle, but by sincerity, professionalism, and an unmistakable voice that still resonates with millions. Today, she continues to perform, write, and advocate for the arts, standing as the most publicly celebrated of the Boone daughters. Debby Boone is proof that a single song can change a life, but it takes character to build a legacy. Number 2. Laury Boone was born in 1957, the third of Pat Boone's 4 daughters, and she inherited something distinctly her own within the Boone legacy. Where Cheryl grew into quiet stability and Debby soared into international fame, Laury carried a creative curiosity that pulled her toward artistry, exploration, and a life woven between music and faith. She grew up in the same disciplined, wholesome household that America idealized, but she also possessed a restless spark, a sense that her path would not be defined by the spotlight, but by depth. As a child, Laury was surrounded by the sounds of rehearsals, family harmonies, and the steady professionalism of her father's career. She often joined her sisters in the Boone Girls, performing on television specials and in church programs. Laury's singing voice was warm and sincere, a blend of her mother Shirley's Carter family lineage and her father's smooth pop delivery. But unlike Debby, whose voice demanded center stage, Laury gravitated more toward collaboration than individual fame. In her 20s, Laury married drummer and musician Harry Bowles, and the two became an artistic team. They immersed themselves in Christian music and worship ministry, writing songs, performing together, and contributing to projects that blended pop influence with faith-centered messages. Laury's creativity flourished in these intimate setting spaces where authenticity mattered more than applause. But Laury's adult life was not defined solely by music. She also developed a deep interest in holistic living, spiritual growth, and emotional wellness. Friends and family often described her as the most introspective of the Boone sisters, the one who asked hard questions, embraced personal transformation, and encouraged healing within the family. Her presence became a grounding force, especially during the painful years surrounding the decline and eventual passing of her mother Shirley. Laury and Harry raised their children with the same values that had shaped her upbringing: faith, service, and integrity, but without the pressures of show business. She chose a path away from fame's demands, prioritizing home community and creative expression on her own terms. While she occasionally appears in Boone family documentaries or reunion specials, she has remained content in the background, living the principles she was raised with rather than performing them. Today, Laury Boone Bowles stands as the reflective spirit of the Boone family, a woman who embodies the softer, quieter strengths often overshadowed in stories of celebrity families. Her journey shows that legacy isn't always defined by fame or chart-topping hits. Sometimes it's defined by the courage to live authentically, to choose peace over pressure, and to build a life rooted not in applause, but in purpose. Number 1. Lindy Boone was born in 1958, the youngest of Pat Boone's 4 daughters. From the very beginning, she embodied the warmth, openness, and emotional sensitivity that would later define her life's purpose. Growing up in the Boone household meant living in the spotlight of America's perfect family, where faith and image intertwined. But Lindy carried something deeper, a quiet empathy that set her apart from the bright polish of the Boone brand. Like her sisters, Lindy performed as part of the Boone Girls, singing on her father's specials and church programs. She inherited Pat Boone's smooth vocal tone and Shirley Boone's gentle spirit. Yet unlike Debby, who chased music professionally, or Laury, who pursued creativity through marriage and ministry, Lindy's calling would emerge through an unexpected and heartbreaking chapter 1 that would redefine her mission for the rest of her life. In 2001, Lindy's world was shattered when her son Ryan Corbin suffered a catastrophic fall through a skylight, leaving him with severe brain injuries and little hope of recovery. Suddenly, her life shifted from performance and family to hospitals, prayer vigils, and a fight for her son's survival. The Boone family rallied behind her, and the tragedy brought national attention, with Pat Boone publicly pleading for prayers and support. Lindy refused to surrender. She became the relentless advocate at Ryan's bedside, learning medical terminology, researching treatments, praying without ceasing, and challenging every limit placed on her son. As Ryan slowly, painfully improved, Lindy discovered a new purpose to help families facing the same unthinkable crisis. She founded Ryan's Reach, a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting brain injury survivors and their families. Through the foundation, Lindy helped secure therapy programs, financial aid, and long-term care resources for countless individuals. Her work turned tragedy into transformation, a testament to resilience, hope, and faith under unimaginable pressure. In 2014, Lindy published Heaven Hears, a memoir documenting Ryan's accident and the miracles that followed. The book became a beacon for parents navigating grief, uncertainty, and spiritual endurance. Her vulnerability and strength resonated with thousands, proving that her true legacy was not shaped by fame, but by compassion. Today, Lindy continues her advocacy work while maintaining close ties with her sisters and the extended Boone family. She remains a symbol of perseverance, proof that, even in a family built on public perfection, real courage comes from the battles fought in private. Among Pat Boone's daughters, Lindy stands as the heartbeat of the family. The mother who turned pain into purpose, the believer who refused to let tragedy define her son, and the woman who gave the Boone legacy its most profound expression of faith in action. From Hollywood stages to hospital rooms, from chart-topping fame to quiet acts of compassion, the story of Pat Boone's 4 daughters is a portrait of legacy lived in 4 profoundly different ways. Each daughter inherited something from the man who became one of America's most enduring entertainers. But what they did with that inheritance reveals far more than fame ever could. Cheryl, the eldest, became the family's anchor, the steady presence who chose service and private purpose over public spotlight. She represents the core values that Pat and Shirley Boone built their lives upon: faith, humility, and quiet strength. Debby, the breakout star, took the Boone legacy to global heights. Her voice became a cultural landmark, yet behind the accolades stood a woman who learned discipline from her father, warmth from her mother, and resilience from the demands of sudden superstardom. Laury, the introspective soul, found meaning in creativity, worship, and emotional depth. She lived out the Boone principles not through fame, but through authenticity, choosing a path defined by spiritual searching and nurturing her own family with the same gentleness she received. And Lindy, the youngest, became the heart of the Boone story. Through unimaginable tragedy, she transformed pain into advocacy, becoming a lifeline for countless families facing brain injury trauma. Her courage and compassion embody the deepest parts of her family's faith. Together, these four sisters form a mosaic of the Boone legacy, each different, each essential. Their lives reveal that behind every icon is a family, shaped by the extraordinary and the everyday, by fame and by faith, by triumph, loss, and unbreakable love. Pat Boone once said that success meant living your values when no one is watching. His daughters have done exactly that. Their stories remind us that legacy is not measured by charts or applause, but by the character handed down from one generation to the next, quiet, steady, and enduring.